to the Entree Architect Twitch stream, also to LinkedIn. And then as a special edition today, brand new, we're live to Twitter. So we'll see what happens. If you're out there on Twitter, say hi. And from whichever platform you're joining from. I see Christian Nielsen from Ithaca, New York over there on Facebook, and Nicole from Arizona on Twitch. And looks like Scott, he said the tide is in San Francisco. He's also on Twitch. And we've got a LinkedIn user. Good morning, LinkedIn user. Unfortunately, your name and likeness is not showing up for us here.
But we have a clue because LinkedIn user says good morning.
Yeah. So I'm guessing maybe West Coast of the U.S.
Maybe
Hans, welcome back from Portland, Maine. Could be Australia. Yeah, absolutely could be. That actually makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? It might be Audrey from Australia.
Yeah.
Exactly. Hans is joining us from Portland, Maine. Brian McCartney, just a stone's throw away from me, at least, in Ohio. Hi, Brian. David Robertson, welcome back from Atlanta. And that urban collab architecture must be Kurt in Flint, Michigan. Glad to have all of you and anybody else that's joining us from wherever in the world and whichever platform you're on right now. Say hi when you get here. Let us know that you're here. And also let us know where in the world you are. It's always fun to see how far these spread. If you've never joined us before, it is not at all unusual for us to have people from the community joining us from all over the world in real time, from the East Coast to the West Coast of the US, over to the UK, down in Ghana and Nigeria, sometimes over to the Philippines, often to Australia and maybe even New Zealand. So it is fun to see where in the world everybody is. So let us know when you get here. Caitlin, we see you over there as well on Facebook. Glad to have you. And for anybody, I don't think I've seen one yet, but for anybody that joins us from Facebook, if you show up as Facebook user, like LinkedIn user does here, you can change that. You can let your name and likeness escape from Facebook. It's just a privacy policy setting. You can go to chat.restream.io/FB. The URL is down in the lower left corner of your screen right now. So chat.restream.io/FB, as in Facebook. My guess is you could do the same if you do /LI, but I don't know that for sure. I'm just making a guess there for the LinkedIn users.
That's a good guess. It's a good guess, Jeff. I think LinkedIn users should try it. Tell us if it works.
You should try it and see what happens. Hopefully you don't end up at a site that was not safe for work by typing that in there. But welcome to everybody. And also to everybody that's joining us from the future on the podcast version of this. Thanks for listening in on the Context and Clarity podcast. That podcast version of these LinkedIn or these Context and Clarity live conversations comes out every Monday at noon Eastern. And then we have a special episode that comes out Tuesdays at noon Eastern. We call that Context and Clarity Backstage, where Katharine and I go backstage with a mystery guest from the community. And we break down this conversation that we're about to have. We talk about our biggest takeaways and applications that we've found from the conversation. How can I apply what I heard in this conversation today to my business, to what I do? So that's a fun version as well. So Mondays, the Context and Clarity Live comes out. Tuesday, Context and Clarity Backstage comes out wherever you consume podcasts. It's everywhere. It's all over the internet. So look for those. Barry, we see you over there from Scotland on LinkedIn, and our LinkedIn user says greetings from Sweden. All right.
Yeah, I was totally wrong. It was not Australia.
It was a test. It was a trick. Glad to have you joining us from Sweden as well. And David, welcome from Oakland, and everybody else. Katharine, how are you today?
I am great. Thanks for asking. You know, I found out they're looking for a local inspector here in my town, building inspector. Yeah.
So what are you going to do about that?
I don't know. Probably not take the job, but I thought about it for a little while this morning. So for a little while, I was a building inspector, but now I'm back to just being me.
You're going to put your cape on and go out to the job sites and make sure everybody's following the laws and rules
so tempting.
Massachusetts and Boston.
Yeah, I would love to, but I don't know. I'm still going to wear the cape, but I don't know. Anyway, so that was fun to dream about today, but so that put me in a good mood.
Well, that's good. Yeah. I think we would probably have to change your title at that point. It would be Inspector Katharine.
Know. That kind of ring to it, but
it'd be don't worry. I'm not Sherlock Holmes, I think. Okay.
I would love to. I wanted to be a detective when I was a kid, actually.
Well, the
I hope it's not
opportunity's
too
out
late.
there.
Yep.
We'll check in next week for an update on the decision making process there.
All right, I'll let you know how it goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, we probably ought to bring our guest out of the green room.
Mm.
There's been a lot of buildup as we have made it through the week towards Thursday. For those of you that don't know, context and clarity is a thing that we do every weekday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern. Also, every weekday morning on the Clubhouse app, we have our half-hour coffee talks, and we shape the week around the guest that's backstage right now, our Context and Clarity live guest. Our theme for this week is video, and you're going to find out why here in just a minute. But we've been talking about video all week. 2 days we talked about basically how-to video for architects. What would you record? Where would you post it? What are your best tips, tricks, techniques, equipment, etc.? And then 2 days this week we're talking about either the architect or architecture as characters. So we've talked about fictional characters. We're going to talk about architecture as character tomorrow, but we've been talking all week about video, how to do it, and also the one really important thing I think about all this is how video or how these characters, I guess, in the specifics of the way that we've been talking about it, how they shape the public perception of architects and architecture. So we might get into that here in this conversation today. But in order to do that, I've got to introduce our guest. So our guest today is a storyteller and a visionary. He's trained as an architect and now the videographer for architects. He's the founder of Bread Truck Films and the producer of many documentaries and films for architects, developers, and communities. Jeff Durkin, welcome to Context and Clarity Live. That's awesome. There he is. He's got the gear. He's got his
Snowman.
props.
I did not see that coming.
Surprise.
I love it. I love it. Welcome. Thanks for bringing the equipment along with you. Great to
Yeah,
have you.
well, it's right here in the office, right next to me, so easy to grab.
Awesome. Is that yours?
That is mine. Yeah,
That was
it's kind of some architects like technology and cameras and
yeah.
innovative tools. And this is what I use here: a Canon C500 full frame video camera Mark II. It's beautiful for architecture. It's got that wide format, so you can film buildings with sky. You can show things with negative space around them. It's good for documentary with audio built in. You can follow an architect around, and it's got a microphone on top. Shoots 6K, super high resolution, slow motion, all the stuff that you want to tell a really compelling story.
Wow.
So you just talked like an architect. So how do you know so much about what architects do and what architects want?
Well, I used to be one. My whole life, I wanted to be an architect. I grew up in the Bay Area, right outside San Francisco, San Jose. And as a young child, you grow up, you're going to San Francisco, you're seeing the Palace of Fine Arts, the Golden Gate Bridge, the cable cars. The city is so designed. All the military, fortresses and outposts that shape the city. So it just really influenced me that, hey, architecture is something you should think about as you get older. It's something that is a job. So I loved it. And, then I graduated and went to Berkeley. So UC Berkeley's got a really good architecture program. It's very focused on sustainability and environmental design, and started to open my mind to thinking like what architecture can do for the planet, how, it could be more responsible, how it could help the communities and stuff of that nature. But for an elective, my final year, I just threw a rock out and took a film class. I just needed to satisfy something before I left. And I'd always been into photography. I've taken photography all through Berkeley 4 years. So I took this film class and said, holy smokes, this is even more exciting than building a model and designing a building. Because now you have all these other art forms like fashion and lighting and theater. They call cinema the mother of all art forms because it combines everything: photography, writing, makeup, stage. So I said, wow, this is like architecture, but then you add a few other things on. Music, right? Think of music. So I said, this is awesome. So I was educated as an architect and moved right to Los Angeles. I got into the film industry and worked there for 5 years, learning about lighting, props, art department, anything I can. I was just hungry to learn. I kind of think of it as a postgraduate degree. That's why I left the Bay Area, because they didn't have a big film industry that I can learn from, and LA was the best. So I did that, and then there was a kind of a union strike thing going on for a little bit as a young production assistant. I got a job at an architecture firm, and started to get back into architecture. So then I rode that for another 5 years. And then it kind of accumulated. It kind of all culminated when 2008, the Great Recession. Architecture firms were kind of shutting down. Video production was picking up. So then I got back into it. But now not with Hollywood film and television, not with mainstream stuff, but documentary stuff I can do myself, stuff I can do on a smaller scale, and just naturally architects were my first clients. I had this hybrid, checkered past, I call it, going back and forth between these two industries. And it just actually resisted working with architects at first, because filmmaking, you think of characters and drama, special effects. It's like very exciting. So I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to film a building, I want to go film a car chase, or, let's do a story about someone going through something emotionally. It's very compelling stuff. But then the architects kept on coming back saying, Jeff, we love your work. Can you film that? Can you photograph that? And I said, okay, sure. Let's do it. And I started to kind of blend. I started to interview the people that lived in the buildings. Like, let's interview a resident that lives in this instead of just talking to the architect. Let's do that. Or let's interview, somebody who helped this project come to fruition that isn't on the design side. And I just got really interested in those human stories. So I kind of was capturing what I liked in cinema, mixed with the beautiful aesthetics of architecture. And I kind of merged myself into the world's first and only architectural filmmaker.
That was one place I was hoping you were going to go, because before we hit go live, basically, the part that all of you in the audience don't get to hear is us having the conversation. And you talked about being possibly the one and only architectural videographer, and you had a name for it, didn't you?
Well, I compared myself to Julia Schulman, and
Yeah.
you guys know Julia Schulman kind of popularized architectural photography before the 1960s. The cameras weren't really around. The tilt shift lenses weren't around. Architects were, I don't know, were they even documenting their work? I guess they were if they were famous, but if you're just a regular architect, you probably weren't even really documenting it. You probably had your drawings. So he started using photography, tilt shift lenses, studying light, studying shadow, and putting people in his photos. And that really brought modern architecture, especially in Los Angeles, to the world, where it could be printed and viewed and cropped and framed. And say, wow, I want that. Clients would say, I want that. I want that guy to design my school. Look at his photos. And I kind of do the same thing with video now, kind of bringing in a new communication form and telling stories in a way that just wasn't really possible. I mean, even 10 years ago, you'd have to hire a big production company, be super expensive. They didn't know anything about design or architecture. They would probably, be doing like big industrial commercials. So I've kind of blended it together, brought it all together into a neat little process.
Well, I'm fascinated by, you've mentioned story and storytelling several times already in this conversation, and I'm fascinated by that aspect of it, especially because you have a statement on your website about your films telling the story of design's impact on a community, or something similar to that. And you just mentioned filming people that live in the building or work in the building. What is it like to work with an architect? And we've talked throughout the week that we just talked to Jonathan Siegel 2 weeks ago on Context and Clarity Live. So 2 weeks ago, he was in the chair you're in now, not literally.
Nice.
But what is it like to work with an architect and say, you know what, we're going to tell the story of this project? Do you find much resistance to that, or architects embracing that? Do they understand the storytelling aspect of your work?
I've been at it about 13 years now, Jeff, and storytelling has evolved so fast over the last few
Sure.
years.
Yeah.
At the beginning, people would be happy just if a guy was riding a bike through, in front of a building. You had motion. That was the big thing, motion, because everyone had photography. So you're not used to seeing the clouds moving and maybe the sun popping up. So it's like, wow, look at this, guys. Something's moving. And, as we've evolved over the last 5 years, 6 years, most architects are aware of good storytelling, and they may not know how to do it. They may not know what is needed in a construction or technical sense, but I think everyone who's involved in the media realizes I need to make this interesting to capture people's attention. The marketing directors and the firms who I usually work with really get it. So I usually don't have to convince an architect, hey, let's tell this big old story. Usually the marketing director understands, hey, this is a great story. And a lot of times there is. Maybe it's affordable housing in San Francisco and you're solving this social problem. Maybe it's a new school up in Santa Barbara that uses nature as a way to educate students. So a lot of times they realize that there's something special there and they want to communicate it. And then it's up to me now to help them shape it into something cinematic, filmable, something we could edit. What are the layers of the story? So no, there hasn't been much resistance. Most of the people I work with are pretty into it. That's why they hire me, or they see one of my videos and go, "Oh, I want something like that." That's
Sure. Yeah.
that's pretty typical. I want
Yeah.
something you did for Jonathan. I want to do that for my company.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I guess that's your ideal client, right? Is the people that are already going to embrace that. Is the process or so you started out, you went to architecture school, as you said, you've worked in architecture firms, you've worked in film, gone back and forth in your checkered past. Is the process of coming up with the story, telling the story, is it comparable to the design process in the architecture office, or what are the compare and contrast those two things if you can?
Sure. Well, the starting point is exactly the same. Like when you meet with a client to design their home, it starts with a conversation. What are you looking for? Where's the site? For me, it's what's the length. That's kind of the site. What's the length of the video? We're talking a 60-second. We're talking 4 minutes. We're talking 30 minutes for a awards presentation. So it starts with a conversation like that. Architects generally will go visual then and start doing sketches and plans. Well, filmmakers go with text and write a script, and that's what I do. So that's the big thing I had to learn, really, that was a lot different than architecture, is how to write an idea that's going to be visual in a script format. And right, here's the beginning, here's the middle, here's the end. Here's the people we want to talk, here's the talking points. So I write a script out that kind of frames the story and the talking points. Most of these are only 3 minutes. They're short, so we can't cram in the 5 years of pain and suffering you just went through to get this new project built. We just try to find the 2 or 3 things that are the most compelling and engaging about it, and package that into a beginning, middle, and end. So once I write the script, then I can sketch out and do drawings of some compositions or some framing. I may go on a scout, take some scout photos, and that's very architectural. That's very similar to the architecture process: sketching, photographing the site, visualizing things. And then other components that I bring in, filmmaking has a big audio component. It's just not visual. So you're thinking about music. You're thinking about the voices. You're thinking about natural sound. So I plan a little bit of that out ahead of time too. And that's something that's very, very true to the film world and architecture world. They're not thinking of audio. Audio is not, building doesn't have a soundtrack or anything like that. So yeah, it starts the same, it goes different, and then it comes together the same a little bit more. And then the actual process is quite different. Most of these films are done very fast. They're done in a few weeks, or a building can take 3 years, 4 years.
Right.
So that part's a lot different.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Isra Banks. Why does someone who's trained as an architect excel in another profession? So we've seen that over and over again, that maybe people who are trained as architects can also excel at other professions. So, and I kind of have a question too about, most architects seem to love photography and film as well. So
Yeah, no. I mean, that's a great question. When was in my senior year at Berkeley, we had a career day, and they would bring in people from Nike, people from Pixar, people from Lucasfilm, all these different companies around the Bay Area who wanted to hire people with an architecture background. And the clearest answer I heard is architecture is a good balance between left brain, creativity, and ideas and imagination, and right brain, problem solving, understanding budgets, timelines, the reality. So it's one of those professions that combines both of them in a pretty equal way. And when you get educated, you kind of understand that. And that's very valuable. Most of Nike's designers in the shoe, in their shoe department, had a degree in architecture, even a background in architecture. So I think it's because you're well-rounded. You can be creative, but you can also be technical. And a lot of careers don't have both of those. And, I think, as we all know, architecture is everything. It's how you wake up in the morning. It's a commute to work. It's where you get your bagel. It's, urban design, planning, landscape. It's so much of everything that I think you can sprout off into many different fields from it and be successful, because architecture is touched and rubbed up against, so many different little fields and industries.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I love that about the architectural education. We end up talking a lot about the future of architecture education. And I hope that part is never lost, regardless of whatever the future of education is.
And you have a great work ethic. If you graduate architecture school, you have an excellent work ethic. And if you graduate with good grades, you're pumping out those models at 2 a.m. You're getting those drawings done. You're doing the renderings. I mean, you were doing a heavy workload as a young person. Yeah. And that's valuable. That's very valuable.
You've got grit and survival skills. maybe bad nutrition and sleep habits, but you've learned to survive. Do you have a style?
Well, I let the story guide the style. So if it's about, homelessness in San Francisco or Los Angeles, then I may go more handheld, and it may be a little more looser and fluid because I'm walking around the streets filming people with a microphone on my camera, maybe be a little more documentary-like. If I'm filming a beautiful custom home in the desert or the mountains with the landscape around it, maybe on a tripod, everything may be beautifully framed. It may have a slower pace to the music. It may have more atmospheric sounds of nature, sounds of the streets and the birds, where, down in an urban environment, architecture that's trying to solve problems is all about the people, the city it's in, maybe the neighborhood's going through something, and you're very focused on that. So it fluctuates depending on the theme and the content. But one thing that I always do is I try to film my projects in a way an architect thinks. I try to shoot elevations. I try to shoot plan shots with the drone. I try and shoot detail shots with a special macro lens I have, so I can get right into a detail. And if I had an X-ray camera, I would shoot a section and show someone walking through. I haven't figured that part out yet. I need to get an X-ray camera or something.
X-ray camera. You'd really, that would be a great invention. We'll start working on that. X-ray camera.
Yeah, or something. They have they have heat sensor cameras where you can film a person on the other side of a wall walking upstairs is kind of a white blob where the heat's coming off. And I thought that would be a way to show the circulation.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
The interior space is designed. So I always try to communicate in the way an architect thinks and conceives the building. So that part's consistent. Then the actual layers on top of that change depending on what the story is.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you're obviously, I mean, it just exudes, right? I mean, you're in the right place doing videography for architects. You speak the language, you have a passion for it. You think like architects think. And so I love that about what you do. When it comes to the filmmaking, which, like you said, first film class was your last semester. So you've learned a lot, obviously, since you graduated from Berkeley. So on the film side, who are your inspirations?
What I like looking at is the early George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola connection. Before Godfather, before Star Wars, and before they became really big, maybe because I'm from the Bay Area. And so so are they. They start out with this kind of run and gun filmmaking. They, they moved very quick. They didn't have these giant crews. They were trying to capture natural light, real people in real places. And they had an actual Airstream trailer they called the Silverfish. And the idea is they would have their gear in there, they would shoot, they would edit, and they would be this mobile production studio that was small. When you make a Hollywood film like they've made, there's hundreds of people. It's very slow. You have 3 or 4 people just doing makeup. You have another dozen doing camera, another 5 or 6 doing lights. So, you don't move fast on a big film set, not on a Hollywood film set. It's all planned, it's all meticulous. But these guys were moving around quick, shooting little things, doing these little films. And that was always inspiring. So when I started my company, Bread Truck Films, they actually gave us a bread truck at the film studio I worked at in Hollywood. And it had an editing studio and had 3 people. And we drove around and we would film establishing shots for Invisible Man or Veronica Mars or any TV show I was working on, or second unit stuff like a hand double holding a gun, or a body double jumping off a bridge or something. So just that kind of fast pace, always on the move filmmaking that Lucas and Coppola started a long time ago when they were students from USC and UCLA was a great inspiration to the production world. And now as I'm older and more mature, I mean, they've moved on. They don't shoot like that anymore. They have huge crews. That's what Star Wars is: giant productions, big blockbusters, brings in millions of billions of dollars worldwide. So they're not doing that anymore. But who I like now, and I just love his style, Christopher Nolan. So you watch Inception, you watch Tenet, you watch Batman Begins, all of those they're huge Hollywood movies. So they may not, be seen as the most creative things because, they're sold in the grocery store to regular suburban families. But his style is so architectural. His framing, the Batman poster is looking down at a city with the Batman logo carved out. You look at Inception, it's all architecture. It's like thinking of a city and creating it at the same time. You watch Tenet, his last film, and, it's about inverting time. It's a very architectural concept, inverting something, like looking at something and inverting it, in architecture. I can't believe, Interstellar. Someone just put Interstellar out there. It's time, stretching time. It's a very architectural concept. Let's stretch out time and memory. Those are themes that, the biggest architects like Tadao Ando and Zaha Hadid are always, philosophizing about. So I guess that's what I really enjoy watching now. And that's where it started with Lucas and Coppola.
That's amazing. Are there inspirations outside of people? I said who, and as I said it, I thought, well, I should have said what. Are there other inspirations that drive what you do, or is it film maker based, I guess?
Well, yeah, I mean, if I'm, filming with a graffiti artist and they're doing a big mural on the side of a building in Hollywood or something, we love filming artists. So artists are always kind of part of the mix. So yeah, we'll film artists and see them paint, see them build sculptures. Maybe they're making a custom fence for this architectural project. Artists and street art were big inspirations. I grew up outside San Francisco, and we used to go there and with our spray cans at night and go underneath underpasses and creeks and do our murals and stuff. So I always loved street art and graffiti as like another form of creativity, but it's totally in the city. It's totally urban, right? You wouldn't have graffiti and street art without a city. No one's painting on the side of a cow, a mural or something. You got to have an overpass or a building or a dam. It's usually these infrastructure, and this infrastructure became the canvas. So I just love that. Especially in San Francisco. It's such a great city full of art on the walls.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, I have not seen a mural on a cow before, so you've got a point.
It's a good idea, though. I mean, why not? Why haven't we?
They would stay still. I mean, you'd have to, you'd have to sedate them or something.
Well, I don't know cows very well. They don't seem to go that fast, but what do I know?
All right.
They can run.
Well, if someone will do it, I'll film it.
All right.
There's a challenge for everybody. Speaking of challenges, I mean, you're storytelling, of course, is just woven through everything that you do. That's what you're doing is storytelling. Have you ever participated in AIA's Film Challenge?
I have. I actually have a pretty long history with it. I won
Okay.
second place in the very first one, and then they
Wow.
hired me to make one on the rural studio as a
Okay.
kind of example film for season two. Then I had a submittal in season three, and now I'm being hired to do a project for the Lookup Challenge about a
Mm.
school in Ojai that burned down and then was rebuilt for the one next year. So I've kind of been
Okay.
off and on with the AIA challenge since it began. Really, it's been a perfect fit. I can't tell you, Jeff, the number of people emailed me that. Jeff, check this out. Look at this. You should submit this. You should do this. And I was like, I'm doing it. Don't worry. Thank
Yeah.
you. I'm doing it. I'm actually been hired by the AIA and I'm working with them. So yeah, no, it's cool you bring that up. It's been part of my regular yearly awards, submittals, and projects to work on.
Very cool. We've got this audience of, I would assume, mainly architects. I mean, that's usually who we're talking to here on Context and Clarity Live, and probably small firm architects at that. Um, One of the things that we've talked about in the different conversations this week is we can look at your work, right? We can go to breadtruckfilms.com and look at your work, and it's amazing. Um, and it's not likely, or maybe even needed, that any of us on this side of the table need to achieve the level that you're working at, right, in videography. But for those who do want to up their game, whether it's for social media or their YouTube channel or whatever, what sort of advice do you have for an architect that wants to do better with video?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, a lot of people, everyone out in architects who want to have video coming across their feed, showing their people, listen to what they're doing. You know, instead of just a still photo, they want to have that. So, you know, what I've learned and what I've seen at most firms are most of the younger generation coming out of college at the young level, they'll all have a camera and they'll all have some experience. They may even have a drone. Almost every firm I've interacted with has someone like that, right? So I would say, you know, embrace them. That's how I started. You know, I had a video camera at my first firm, you know, Johnson Siegel 15 years ago. And they're like, start filming, Jeff. You're the only guy who can do it. So start doing it. So, yeah, I would look to the younger generation who has this stuff. They just grew up with video, they know how to do it. Um, every market, every city you're in, there's going to be real estate videographers. You can type in wherever you live, real estate videography, Maine, real estate videography, you know, Indianapolis. You'll find a handful of people that film real estate for a living. They'll have drones, they'll have time lapses, they'll have insurance, they'll know how to do an interview. You know, pricing is going to be all over the place. You can find some young person just starting and it's a low amount. You can find a guy who's going to do a great job and make an awesome video, and that's a higher amount. So yeah, I would say start with people in your firm. See if you can do that. You can do cell phone stuff, but it does have to be good, and audio has to be good. You can't be on a job site and have some bulldozer going off, and you're like, "Look at this, you know, grading we're doing. No one can hear you." People will click off. That's the thing. People's attention is very short. So I would plan your content out a little bit before you start shooting. Think about what you want to say. Think about your audience too. A lot of architects try to make a video for themselves, but you know they're not hiring other architects. Aren't hiring another architect. You know, if it's a homeowner, then yeah, they may really care about having a peaceful, serene place to raise their family and build a custom home. So think about how would you communicate to them. You know, or if you're doing something with the school in a classroom, you know, it's a publicly funded project. Think about what's going to be important to them. You know, don't sit and talk about the drawings and the elevations and the sight lines and, you know, the things that interest you. Think about like how the kids are going to have lunch and talk about that, you know, what are the kids going to do after school? You know, is there an area for them? Is it shaded? Is it well designed? Is it an afterthought? So think about your audience, number one. You can shoot stuff in-house. Number two, keep it short. People have an average about 2.5 minutes of attention span. If you're doing your own video, I'll keep it to 30 to 60 seconds. I wouldn't go that long. And get good audio. It's essential to get good audio. If you want to do the interview inside a room, so it's clean and clear, and then film shots outside of the building, and then blend them together so that the video is going on top of the audio. That's a great way to do it. But make sure you have good audio. You can buy a little mic on Amazon, $25. You stick it to your chest here, and you put it in the camera and shoot horizontal.
Yeah, this is all great tips. Looks like we've got a question from Sarah Lee.
Yeah, Sarah Lee wants to know, because we just want to know how to do what you do. So really, she wants to know what software you'd recommend for video editing for those of us who don't do it professionally.
Yeah, so I use Adobe Premiere. I'm part of the Adobe suite, which most architecture firms will have a little bit of experience with. Photoshop, InDesign for presentations, Illustrator for awards and print stuff. And they have a light version called Premiere Rush. You can do it on your phone. You can edit stuff on your phone. I don't know how much it is. It's supposed to be kind of like the iMovie type thing, something simple, something someone can do on their phone or on a basic laptop. And I would check out Premiere Rush or iMovie.
That's a great suggestion. So, you're talking about, you've got the range, I guess, the young person and the experienced person, and it's just like architecture, right? There's gonna be a wide range. How have you, as you've built your business over the years now, how have you grown it, and how have you maybe upped your client base and found your ideal client?
Sure. Well, that's a layered question, Jeff. We'd have to do a whole other podcast to answer all those questions and stuff. I started out just doing stuff for Johnson Siegel in an office, not even getting paid. It was part of the salary.
Yep.
Here's a guy that's got a camera. That sounds cool. I just got a phone and it's got a screen on it. Now we're watching videos 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So, I started early when it was just like, let's experiment with this stuff. And, then I've continued to build a reputation through good videos. Luckily, I'm in a little niche. There's not a lot of people that do architectural videos. So in San Diego or Los Angeles, San Diego is where I live, Los Angeles is where I work. I've built a reputation. People come to me. So a lot of my clients now have passed on word of mouth. Like, yeah, look at Jeff Retrofield. This guy used to be an architect. That kind of gets my foot in the door all the time. Okay, yeah, we can trust him. This guy's going to understand. They went to Berkeley. That stuff helps. Making good films. And then doing a whole lot of marketing. I really reach out because I have such a unique little niche in the world. No one's ever thinking, oh, I need a video. Let's hire an architectural videographer. Right? You think about that with photography. Like, yeah, I know a couple of architectural photographers. I work with them at this other firm. This guy has taken some photos for us before. Let me call them. I need some photos for a competition. So I spend a lot of time meeting people, just having coffee, connecting, telling them what I do, doing things like this, podcasts, outreach, talking to the community. I work with the AIA a ton. I work with San Diego Architectural Foundation a ton. I work with these different organizations where I could just meet people and tell them, hey, I'm from your community. I'm from your world. I love making films. If something pops up in the next few years, you're going to think about me, just because it's a little niche thing. So it's been about, 13 years. And my regular week, if you broke down my whole year, I spent about, I would say 60% filming and setting up the deals and editing. And then almost 40%, I would say, networking, marketing, and I don't look at it as some big dirty job. Sometimes I go to a book signing and I buy a book from an architect I really like, and I just tell them a little bit about what I do, or I go to a lecture and meet someone I went to school with 15 years ago, or I email someone or find someone on LinkedIn, and say, hey, check, let's do this film. So I just gotta kind of keep an atmosphere of communication. That's what I call it. Yeah. That's what I call it. That's led to a lot of conversations.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's great. And, you mentioned that maybe, maybe right now somebody's first instinct is to talk about photography, but obviously video is, it's not just a thing. I mean, it's taking over, right? So, obviously it's going to grow into the future, but as you look from today further into the future, what do you see that future looking like in terms of video and technology? And where do you think all of this is headed, especially from the professional point of view, from your point of view?
It's a really good question, Jeff. That's definitely a question that's evolving, and the COVID and the pandemic has caused video to spike. Just over the last year alone, I've done so many projects for award shows like San Diego's Orchids and Onions. We filmed the judges talking about the project instead of people in a live space, so people can stream it virtually. The Monterey Design Conference, big conference in Northern California, international architects. They would send me video from their office, and I would clip it together and make it virtual. So I think when things are going virtual, video is going to be the best way to communicate that stuff, whether it's a live event or something across the country where people can't get together, or business travel has changed. No need to fly everyone together. We can do a conference online, or we can spend an afternoon watching videos, learning from each other instead of all trying to get to, Indianapolis or New York or something. So I think video is going to continue to grow. I think video is going to continue to grow when it comes to telling stories and connecting with people that are living in different cities. I think photography is still going to be fundamental, just because all the awards and all the competitions, all that stuff is all based on architectural photography. They do want a video a lot of times now, but they want to see the still images. And if you have a client, you have a meeting, you can show a video, which is awesome. But then you also want to have some very nice still images showing what you did, how you transformed this neighborhood or that, how you built that out. So I think photography is going to be still kind of maintain its high level of importance. But I think when it comes to business development, you want to show that human component. That's video. So if let's just say a board of directors is doing an addition to the new museum in town, and they're going to interview 4 or 5 different architects that have done a lot of cultural buildings. So these guys all have done great schools and buildings, libraries, educational centers. We'll interview them. And if one of them has a video, and you're interviewing the families that are going to a museum and talk and say, we love coming here on the weekend. I'm a single mom. I bring my kids here. They have events. They have a big play space out front. You have a lot more excitement and energy around that than showing photos. So I think video is going to be really helpful for business development when you try to show a new potential client how your architecture can impact their audience, their client, right? So how you're designing for them. So I think that's going to be a big avenue. And then these international networking events are going to turn to video, instead of flying around and meeting people as much as we can handle. It will be nice back face to face, but so I think it's writing itself right now, Jeff. I think the idea of where video can really help out is still writing the story and developing, but it's going to be huge. I always tell my kids we're at the very beginning of the age of video communication. At one point, taking a photo was a brand new thing, right? 100 years ago, that was only things a few people did. Now it's ubiquitous. Everyone's got a camera, everyone's got a phone. Photos all around us all day. So I think video is going to continue to grow, continue to expand, because you have that human component, that human talking to a human through a screen. It's a lot more emotional and impactful.
Right. Is it's taking the human out of it. Is AI or VR or AR, is that coming into your world at all?
Not really. That's a little bit more based on 3D modeling and designing a building, and then having the clients visualize it before it's built. So that's a little bit more in the actual architecture design studio, where they're using VR and saying, hey, we'll build a 3D model, we can put on the goggles and see what it looks like, and then we'll make the changes. I haven't had a chance to mix that into my work yet. There hasn't been a request, there hasn't been a need. We will do a lot of videos for developers, like way before the project's built, like a vision video. Here's the vision, here's the neighborhood, here's the renderings of what's going to look like, here's the impact, and here's some animations. We'll mix in beautiful animations. But the VR AI thing, so far now, is kind of a live in the moment. This is how we're designing process thing, instead of a communication marketing tool afterwards.
I got it. And I think that brings us all the way back to the, what it says on your website about telling the story of the impact of design, right? The impact that the design makes on the community. That's the thing that fascinates me about what you do is, we can we can have beautiful photographs, beautiful still images of X building, and sure, we can put some somebody riding by on a bike, or a dog, or whatever into the image. But I think you have so much ability to tell that story so much better, and really show what this is doing in a community, what this is doing for clients, the people that live there, that work there. I love what you're doing there. As we I know we're getting close to the top of the hour here, and we want to bring in some questions from the audience. So, are you up for a speed round?
I'm here. Let's do it.
This is going to be hard because there are lots of questions. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
All right.
Fire.
So if you could go back in time, would you go to college for architecture and then go to film industry again, and would you just skip architecture?
It's hard to say because I've created something totally unique and original now that is something I would never have foreseen. I think if I went back to college if I somehow got transported into a 21-year-old body and I had my brain that I have now, I think I would go to film school and stay in the film industry, just because the world of streaming content is booming. And I'm here in California. I'm here where it's at. There's a lot of money being made. Everyone's coming up with really cool shows. I mean, this is the golden age of television. Netflix and Hulu and Disney are putting out stuff better than you see in the theater. These are beautiful, big budget, top star content, and there's a giant demand for it. So I think I would probably ride that wave if I was 21 again and had my 45-year-old brain, and say, hey, go do that. That's buzzing. And I probably would have stayed clear of architecture. But I absolutely love what I'm doing. And I love the world design, and the fact that I'm the only one doing it is so satisfying. So
that is true. But if we're supposed to be doing speed round now, but I'm just saying that it's like different if suddenly you were 21 right now and then they're streaming all that stuff going on, or if you could go back to being 21, knowing what you know now. So that's kind of different because that wouldn't have been all the technology.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because back when I graduated in 1994, it wasn't a big boom in film production and streaming like there is now. There wasn't this big demand for content. You had to be in a small boys club in Hollywood to be working in mainstream. Now, now it's open to everyone. So you're right. I'll think about that.
Okay. Anyway, this is supposed to be fast. Okay. So do you need your website translated into Spanish?
Thank you for that offer, but no, I work primarily in the U.S. and it's all good. But thank you for that. I'm sure they got great filmmakers in Spain.
Okay. Do you ever use your smartphone for shooting anything? I think you already answered that when you do the.
I don't. That's not my style. But once in a while, we're doing a story about a fire that destroyed a school in Santa Barbara Hills, and I'm going to use cell phone footage that the school students took 3 years ago to communicate that. So I'll use other people's cell phone footage if there's a dramatic plot line that I can apply it to.
Yeah. Cool. Do you have other interests that might spin out of this? It's a short answer because we got.
Oh, Jay, you kidding me? I'm too busy. And the other interests. How about sleeping?
Yeah.
And then, I'm riding a big wave. A lot of people love video, and I built up a good reputation. I travel all over California, so I'm good with this right now. I just want to keep improving my craft and telling awesome stories.
All right, no more interest. We got it. Okay, so what's your favorite thing to do? I guess just sleep, either sleep or work. I think we just answered that too.
Hiking. I love getting out to nature. So me and the family went to Yosemite, and just nature clears my mind, and I think about my projects, and I come back fresh and clean.
Nice. Okay. Who is your favorite architect as character?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. There's so many characters out there. I mean, from Tadao Ando being a boxer and his early days in Japan, delivering stuff, Frank Lloyd Wright with all his scandals and highs and lows. I mean,
true. But I think we're thinking like Mike Brady type of fictional character.
Yeah, we should have said fictional character.
We
should have. Yes. There are lots of architects who are characters for sure.
Yeah.
It's hard to choose one.
Well, let's think here. I mean, who is an architect in a well-known film that we know?
There's a lot, but I have the benefit of having Googled this the other day.
Yeah, we spent a long time talking about
this on Tuesday. Yeah.
Give me some names, Jeff, and I'll tell you.
Well,
besides
you had,
Mike Brady.
So you had Mike Brady. You had
Woody Harrelson in A Decent Proposal, just a half step up from Mike Brady.
Yep. You had Adam Sandler in Click.
Oh, that's right.
Charles Bronson in Death Wish,
Was it
the
Paul?
original Death Wishes.
Was it Paul Newman in Towering Inferno? Was that?
I don't
Yes.
know the film,
Yep.
but
Yeah, I
he's
know.
a great actor. So I would
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say I'm going to watch that film and get back to you.
All right, you're gonna
Yeah.
have to come back on again because we have a million more things we want to talk to you about anyway. So you can think about that for next time. Do we have any other questions here that are
Here's a
short?
good one. Here's a good one right here. How much film do you shoot for a 5-minute video? This is a good.
That's a good one.
Okay, that's a good one.
This is a good question because it explains the process. So, David, it's all over the board. Sometimes when I'm working with a nonprofit and it's a small budget, I film for an hour. I get 2 interviews. I film the building, and I'm out in an hour or 2, and I have enough for a 5-minute film. Other projects where there's this grand story, I may film for 3 days. That's what I'm doing up in the Santa Barbara Mountains. We're going to spend 3 days filming students, teachers, architects about the school that was destroyed in the Thomas Fire and then rebuilt and created a brand new community. So it's a deeper story. It needs more filming. If you want to get basic information across, you can get it done in a few hours or half a day.
That is a great question. And
Don't you know what?
Costanza. There it is, man. This
There
guy.
it is. Yeah.
George Costanza. It's true. He's the best one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jay has volunteered to paint a cow, which I put up before on the screen, and he was disappointed that you did not go for it. He wrote to me off backstage.
Jay. Do you live on a farm? Do you have access to a cow?
Oh yeah, he does. He's in Vermont, so he'd be the one to paint cows for sure.
Yeah, what a beautiful place! I'd love to film in Vermont.
Yeah.
Well,
you might
you've got to. Yeah, you got to hook up with Jay there. He's up in the sticks of northern Vermont, is how he describes it. But it is a beautiful area up there where he is.
Yep,
definitely.
I bet it is.
Okay, well that's all the questions I have for the speed round.
That's all of your speed round questions.
Well,
all right.
4:59. So I thought you might want to say something else before I just.
Yeah, well, I'm glad somebody's watching the time for us. This is fascinating, and again, I appreciate the work that you're doing, Jeff. And I said at the beginning, one of the reasons that we have 2 topics this week. One, who's your favorite architect as fictional character, and then tomorrow on our Context and Clarity conversation, we'll talk about who's your or what's your favorite architecture building or space or whatever as character in literature, TV or movie. Is that this is how this is where the public perception of who architects are and what architects do and what architecture with a big A is. So that's why we're covering those topics this week. But coming back to that statement that's on your website, telling the story of the impact of design, I think that's so important. So I appreciate you doing that. I'm glad that you've got your little nation, that there's a lot of architects finding value in your work, and you're able to tell the story, whether it's Rural Studio or the organizations in San Diego or Jonathan Siegel, whoever it is. So thanks for that. And thanks for coming on with us today.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you guys. It was great to meet you, Jeff, almost a year ago or a year and a half ago. Great to get to connect like this again. This is awesome.
Yeah, there's a little bit of trivia for everybody. Right as the pandemic began, I started these, what for me was lunchtime conversations. For Jeff, it was 9 o'clock in the morning, I suppose. But and that kind of parallels the beginning of Context and Clarity, our Context and Clarity conversations back in early April. So that's almost exactly how long Jeff and I have known each other. So Jeff, again, I really appreciate you joining us. And everybody in our audience, thank you for showing up. Thanks for your questions and comments today. Thanks for making Context and Clarity a thing, because without you being a part of this community, we wouldn't be talking to Jeff Durkin today and learning about videography for architects. And for those of you listening on the podcast, thanks for listening. Appreciate you. Be sure you tune in again for our Context and Clarity backstage version, because Katharine and I are going to go backstage here momentarily, and we're going to talk about our biggest takeaways from this conversation and things that we learned and ways that we can apply everything that Jeff talked about to our own businesses, to our own practices, et cetera. So I think that's a fun fun version of Context and Clarity as well. So this Context and Clarity backstage. But again, all of you, thank you. Thank you for all of this. And Katharine, thanks as always for keeping the wheels on the bus and keeping an eye on the clock today.
Yes, my
Appreciate
pleasure.
that. Absolutely. So
Awesome.
again, everybody, thank you. Appreciate it. And Jeff, thanks. And we'll see everybody. I should talk about this next week for Context and Clarity Live. We will have Patty Harris from Licensure. She's an attorney. She founded her firm called Licensure, and she deals with, as you can imagine, licensing, professional licensing across all types of jurisdictions. So tune in next week, Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern, on the Entree Architect Community Facebook group, the Entree Architect YouTube channel, Entree Architect Twitch stream, on LinkedIn on my profile, and apparently on Twitter now, on my Twitter account. We'll see how that turned out today. I'll have to check that out. But join us next week again for Context and Clarity Live. Of course, we'll be live tomorrow on the Clubhouse app at 9 a.m. Eastern, talking about architecture as character. And then tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern for our next Context and Clarity conversation. So again, thanks everybody. Appreciate all of you. And I hope I'll see you somewhere sometime soon. Bye, everybody.